Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're all well. Welcome to episode 5 of the Believers Adequate podcast. We will be speaking to brother Zeeshan, who is on the BT commercial graduate scheme. And we basically talk about what his career journey was that led him to the BT commercial graduate scheme, what schemes actually like, what the running of it is, what day-to-day looks like, the sort of importance of these sort of skills for the community. And it's a area of work that's in demand but isn't really spoken about or isn't really something that we normally consider. Like, he went from doing a psychology degree to get into a commercial career. So it's something that's pretty an interesting role, which I think has a lot of skill sets and skills that are in demand by employers. So it should be something that's definitely considered. We also talk about his sort of advice to young Muslims, how to make the most of such programs, how he did his research on different programs to find out things that will work for him, and also the importance of taking the initiative, being a hard worker, and not just sort of resting back and taking it easy at, second, third year university, but really starting to think about the next step after and starting to do your research and why that's important. So we speak a lot about that and much more. So this should be a really insightful, interesting episode into, a commercial graduate scheme at BT, which is a big organization. So definitely enjoy this one and, hope it's useful, and feel free to comment, like, subscribe, and, spread the word. It really does help and make a difference. Enjoy. So welcome, brother Zeeshan, to the Believers Early Crest podcast. This has been a long-awaited discussion since our first phone call, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. No. Wa alaikum assalam. And thank you very much for having me, Brother Rahil. I'm very, very honored to be, featuring on your podcast. I think this is something that is very much needed for the ummah, I definitely would have benefited from something like this growing up. So to be here to share my insights and knowledge with the ummah, which I hope this will be something that will grow massive, over the next few sort of years and just years and for generations to come, Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I mean, how are you? How are things?
It's good, man. It's good. Very good. Alhamdulillah. Since I come back from Istanbul, I had that conversation with Mary recently. So that episode should be coming out maybe before or after this, depending on the scheduling.
Yeah.
But now kind of getting back into the holiday mood. I think because I went away, I've had a break this week with no episode. So I'm just looking at how can I make this a bit easy to manage, in the sense that rather than maybe doing a weekly thing, maybe batching it and then releasing across the weeks or something like that, and recording a bunch of episodes and bringing it out. So I'm looking at stuff like that, but in the sense that just to make it more manageable and more easy, because when you're managing it with a full-time job, it's not as as easy as we like. But alhamdulillah, I get a lot of messages of support. I think a lot of people like yourselves, they've said, this is something that's been needed for a long time, and I think me and you can both 100% vouch that if we maybe had this at an earlier age, then it would have been, really beneficial just to see people that we can identify with, to understand our values, that, that look like us, that we can really connect with, telling their career stories and how they've done it, in the sense that, how they navigate certain challenges, what's the actual career like, and what different options are there for young Muslims, because, our culture and our community kind of leans towards typically the university way, and typically the careers like medicine, doctor, lawyer, engineer, all that kind of stuff. But there's so much more out there, and I think commercial is something that's really untapped. But I think we went in a quite interesting way. So it'd be good to know just a bit about what you're doing in BT, because I know I saw the post about the BT Muslim Network, and I know there's a bit of social mobility thinking going on there, and how you can support those from disadvantaged backgrounds, which led to our good phone call, and which led to this. But I guess you said before we even get into the BT Muslim Network stuff, let's start with, as usual, a career story. So, from college, how did it lead to where you are now on this program?
Yeah, definitely. So for myself, typical sort of Asian coming through, GCSEs, I did okay. Not too bad. I think I had a couple A's, and majority of it was B's, right? So no, nothing sort of spectacular, right? And then when it came to sort of, A levels, I did psychology, geography, and IT, right? So, and this is where I started to really up my game now, because this is where it starts to get serious now. Universities are up for stake. You've got to put in as much effort as you can, right? So I did those sort of three. Actually, you know what? I don't tell these people a lot, but I did maths as well, right? At AS level, but I flopped maths completely. So I think I got a D or something, right? So I immediately
I got a
dropped
D
it.
as well, so you're not alone, bro.
Yeah, at least someone's with me in that boat. But yeah, I dropped it. I thought, you know what? I did really well in my other three. So, my first year in the AS, I got like A star, AA, and then at the end of A2, I got AAB. I was literally one off like a mark of psychology for an A star. So I was like, but you know what? Everything happens for a reason, So I wasn't too bothered. I had when I was at A levels, obviously applying for universities, I applied to many sort of university ones, but I was quite adamant I wanted to go to, pride myself on being at an institution which is big, which is massive, good research standards, quality, teaching wise. So yeah, I had applied to the big ones like King's, UCL, Queen Mary, and at the end of it, I got an unconditional offer from Queen Mary, right? So East London. So
That's
yeah,
the
it
one,
was
isn't
it was yeah. So what it was is that I had an unconditional offer going into my final sort of year. So I was like, I could have easily sort of took my eye off the ball and that kind of thing, but that's not the way to approach it, right? Because I think what people need to realize is that even if you have an unconditional offer, and it sort of gives you that that license to really slack off a bit, which I do not advocate anyway. You really need to think about the future as well, because when you're going to do your degrees and you get a first or two, one, whatever it may be, right? Employers still look at what your A level results are as well, right? So they are something quite important. So yeah, alhamdulillah, I did really well in A levels. I really honestly just gave it everything, right? Because I really wanted to get to a university. I really felt, this is a path I wanted to go down. And there wasn't really a lot of things or like awareness with regards to apprenticeships, right? I knew a bit about it, but not a lot. And that might be a path that I would have gone down. My other brothers do work in they secure sort of an apprenticeship and degree apprenticeship. So university was sort of the path I was more sort of exposed to. So I naturally just went sort of down that route, and I did a degree in psychology. So when I was thinking about my degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. There was two main options, right? One was, first I wanted to go into computer science, and then typical sort of agent going into the tech sort of role. So what I did was, when I was in my personal statement, I was doing it on like my dad. He was helping me as well, and I started to learn a bit of coding. Right, I thought, let's try this out, see what it's all about before I actually get into spending 3 years actually doing this and then doing a whole career for it. I tried learning it. I didn't really enjoy it. I felt it's not a career for me. I can't imagine myself doing this, day in, day out for the rest of my life, right? Even if the money's good, I don't care. This isn't something I'm not going to enjoy. So,
Yeah, that's very important.
exactly. So I just sacked it off. I thought, this it's just not for me. So I thought, okay, what next now? I really like psychology. I really like geography as well. In the end, I went with psychology. I really did like sort of what psychology had to offer, what it's about. Such a versatile discipline that can be applied to all walks of life, right? So I thought, you know what, let's go with psychology, because I really did have a passion for this and something that I thought, I would actually enjoy. So went down the psychology route, did it at Queen Mary. 3 years absolutely flown by. And yeah, that's sort of just my career story there. But the sort of the main tenets of my career story, say it was literally hard work. When it really mattered, right? I really put in the effort and I went above and beyond to actually get to where I needed to be, right? It's always important to have the end goal in sight. Where do you want to be? And then start to, develop a plan or have an idea in your mind as to what it actually looks like and what's actually required. And then all you got to do is just execute it.
Yeah, did you always because one thing I noticed is the mindset about hard work, was that always instilled in you, or did that develop at some point? Because I know for me, if you looked at me in college, I was probably the opposite of you. I was like, the guy that wanted to go home and play FIFA and, just do that. That was in me. And the hard work mindset wasn't really embedded in me. It came at a much later stage. For you, when did that kind of mindset embed in, where you want to work hard and you want to really achieve?
Very, very good question. I think for me, a lot of it was instilled due to mainly my family and my dad. My dad, he's a very big inspiration to myself, someone he started work at a really young age, continued to work now, and he's a very, very hard worker, right? Whenever something needs to be done, he gets it done. So I sort of inherently had those sort of things in me already, right? But I wouldn't say that's just enough. Then there's a case of yourself going above and beyond and starting to work on yourself and hone those sort of skills as well, right? So whilst I'll say that I probably did have the hard working sort of mentality instilled into me, there was still a lot more room for me to actually use it as a base and foundation, and then really exploring it and taking it to the next level, you know, going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. Your dad kind of set a good example there for you to build on, which I think is something that we, you need to do for young Muslims, is to kind of show that, we're maybe in these positions and we've done it through hard work, but that doesn't necessarily mean, we're not saying it's possible, or we're not saying we've done it all on our own merit. We're saying that, it can be done, and with hard work, it can be done, but it's to show that, if we can do it, then why can't they go on to build on what we've done and go and exceed even more? Because the potential is there. The potential has never been absent. And I think it's just maybe seeing people that you can relate to in these positions is something that may just be the push that young Muslims watching this might need. But I guess, so this is the university element. How interesting question now. So I know you initially considered computer science, then you went to do psychology. How did it lead to a career in commercial?
Yeah, so
So
good
what,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, right? Coming up through the ranks, it was always, one time I wanted to do this, another time I wanted to do that, right? So I didn't really know. It was just sort of all up in the air. So when I was coming into university, and obviously you've got to start to pattern up at this moment in time, making sure you get your results, the grades, everything. Obviously that's standard, right? But it's still got to be done. So I'm like someone who likes to plan in advance and at least let's have some thinking. Well, I don't leave everything to the last minute. I think it's a completely wrong approach to go down. So I think when I was in end of my first year, going into my second year, I started to look at just roles, general stuff as to what you can do with my degree. So obviously, whilst doing my research, I looked at, there was a loads of careers that you could go down with the psychology route, you could be clinical psychologist, educational psychologist, all that sort of stuff, right, within the psychological discipline. And then I also looked at, okay, if these are the careers within psychology, what are the careers outside of psychology as well, right? So, second year, started to take it more seriously, started to look at what do I actually want to do? Let's start to pinpoint this now, right? Had a rough sort of framework now will guide us to what's out there. Now it's really up to me as to what I want to do. So going through all of sort of the options that were presented to me, I thought, let's start with my degree. Is it something that I really want to go into? Initially, I thought when I started my 3 years, my first year, I was like, you know what? Yeah, man, I really want to become a psychologist. I want to become chartered. But the thing is, right, you have to, it's a long process, right? You got to do, after you do your bachelor's, is like a master's and like a work experience for like a year in a mental health setting or whatever area you want to go into. And then you got to do a PhD at the end of it as well. And so I thought, this isn't really for me, man. This isn't for me. A bachelor's is more than bachelor's is more than enough for me. So I thought, you know what, it would be nice to be called a doctor when you get the PhD, right? But I thought, nah, this is maybe in another lifetime or something like that, right? But it wasn't not for me. So I thought, you know what, that one I pretty much I like to keep open-minded, right? Keep it as an option, but it wasn't something I really wanted to go into. But I always had the option if I ever wanted to go back there, I could because of my degree. Then I looked at careers outside of the lab, outside of psychology, right? And essentially what I did, I just started Googling some stuff. I was quite familiar with quite a few big companies out there, like your top four, big four, like EY, KPMG, that sort of stuff. So I was just looking at their websites and I was seeing that it's something called graduate schemes, right? I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And then once I was doing more research and stuff, it looked like it was literally the cream of the crop, right? When you graduate, and essentially the ideal scenario would be to graduate, get on a graduate scheme because they pay well, you get your developmental opportunities, training opportunities, the guidance support, everything like that. So that's an environment that I really wanted to be in, right? Because I thought, for me coming out of university, going into the workplace, I would really benefit from firstly having some, fellow graduates with myself in the same boat, but also then if there's like a training program or development in place, that would help me to actually learn the trade really of what I'm doing day in, day out. So I then focused on to sort of graduate scheme. This is really where I wanted to go into now. Now really was a case of outlining what areas within the graduate schemes I wanted to go in and what companies for, right? So, for me, I had, because the graduate schemes are open to so many different disciplines, right? They have so many different areas you can apply to. And a lot of people don't actually know that with graduate schemes, I think 80% of them, right? Don't quote me on this, but I think around 80% of them is, they're open to pretty much any discipline, right? So whatever you study, it doesn't matter. You can apply for them. And I think like 20% are like the really technical roles. You obviously need to have a background within that sort of area.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, the opportunities there are absolutely massive, right? Any degree, psychology, religious studies, whatever it is, right? You can apply to these sort of roles. I was like, okay, brilliant, fantastic. So started to look at companies, researched into Google, and basically I found like an article, I think it was at the Times top 100 employers, right? And it basically was like 100 of the best sort of graduate companies. So, okay, this is really good because I knew some of them already, but a lot of them I didn't know as well. So I started to expand sort of my selection criteria as to who to apply for. So I was doing all of this. This is when it got really serious, sort of start of my third year, right? I started applying for these roles. So doing my research first, as always. And then, so I had the summer break off right before I started third year. That's when it really sort of took off. I thought, let's use this time to, maximize my time and efficiency. So that's what I did. And then, really it was a case of now what job area do I want to apply for? So there was two main areas that, applied to me. One was HR. I was really not just general HR, but I was more sort of attracted to the niche areas of HR, such as like, learning and development or diversity and inclusion, that sort of thing. And the other one was sort of like a leadership type of program, right? Because for me, I see myself as an ambitious individual, but someone that's also a leader as well in the years to come once I've learned my craft, etc. So yeah, inshallah. But so those are the two areas that I focused on, right? So when there was like graduate schemes coming up and I was applying to them, those were the two areas that I focused on. If they didn't have like a commercial sort of one or leadership one, I'd apply for like HR. If there wasn't a HR one, I'd put one to commercial, right? So that's sort of how I really got into commercial, really, because I think it's a really good career foundation to really give you that basis and foundation for you to really accelerate to your career. And I think it gives you so many transferable skills, right, that you can apply to any sort of role as well. So yeah, I mean, just in summary, it's really a case of just researching what is out there that I can apply to, and then really what interests me. So I never thought in a million years I'd end up in a career in commercial, for starters, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, when you were doing psychology like at Star University, did you think, commercial is the one? Like it doesn't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't work like that, and I meet quite a lot of different people at BT, much more senior than me, and they've sort of had the same path where they didn't really know what they wanted to do, and they've sort of just led them, to the journey or path that they are in right now, right? So yeah, it's I mean, I didn't know what a commercial career was, right, when I first started. Exactly, you don't get exposed to these kind of things early on. You're always exposed to, like you said before, that your standard sort of Asian roots, which is medicine, dentistry, law, all those sort of things, which is absolutely fine, right? But I think it's important to keep an open-minded and broaden your horizons to what's actually out there, because to be honest, I really enjoy what I've been doing. So, alhamdulillah, it's all worked out for me at the moment. So yeah, that's sort of how I really got into commercial.
One thing I like that you've done, and I think people should definitely do, is you took time to research each company.
Yeah.
One thing I would, again, that thing you've done, I 100% advise people to do it, because there isn't a single place where you're going to find all these opportunities. Like, I might push certain opportunities on my socials, but I'm not going to push all of them. Whereas when I was searching for apprenticeships, I realized when I just search individual companies, random ones, like, for example, EE, Vodafone, BT, TFL, just literally searching it by itself, whether it's apprenticeships or graduate schemes, and do that Google search, then you'll find directly what schemes they're doing, if they are or not doing schemes. And that's the best way to do it, because all these companies do a lot of marketing, but they can't always get the message out there everywhere.
Yeah.
And they only do it at certain times before the scheme is going to be promoted. So if you're doing your own thing, whether it's in the summer or any downtime, to literally just search up these different companies and what schemes they do, then you're going to give yourself an advantage, because you're going to see what's out there properly. And you have to do that research. Otherwise, you can't expect everything to come to a plate, or for everyone to come to your university to tell you what's out there. You've got to literally go out there and do it yourself. And I guess, with commercial, I think you kind of touched upon, it does, it's not a career that you normally just naturally think about when you're looking at what's out there. But it does consist of a lot of valuable skills that we can maybe get into soon. And the other thing is, it's in massive demand. Like, people don't really realize that, commercial skills, things like contracts, procurement of products and services for companies, like, a lot of companies aren't doing it right. So they need the people that know how it works, that can get the best deals, and they can, manage those contracts. And I think people don't often associate why is that important, but it is massively important. And I think stuff like maybe the track and trace stuff where they're looking at who they issuing it to, like,
yeah,
I think they probably have issued it to their own people. I'm not sure exactly who, but a lot of money is probably going down the drain because of that. So straight away, if the commercial stuff was on point and was right, then perhaps they wouldn't have that issue and it will save a lot of money. And that's why there's a lot of demand there, because it's really important that for big organizations, especially, they need to have their commercial stuff,
definitely
in line. But I guess it would be good. So you when did you start this program?
So I graduated last summer, right? So summer 2019, around June, July, and then I then secured. So when I was applying sort of first year, so normally what happens like grad schemes, right? They open like a year in advance, right? Yeah. So then you'll apply. They'll open for like August, September, October, whatever. Then you'll go through all the graduate process, application process, and then you'll pretty much next September. So I started last September. So pretty much, right? It was a couple of months off I had from graduating, which is a great time to have to do anything, right? To look forward to getting money, getting to work. And then, so, alhamdulillah, I started in September, and my work anniversary just came. I got a note from LinkedIn as well, saying, my anniversary has come up, which is, alhamdulillah, it's been 1 year, right? So it's a 2-year program that I'm on. It's been 1 year now, and time's just flown by, I look at where I was at the start to where I am now. A lot of learning, a lot of, opportunities been given to me, and time honestly has just flown by.
So you applied, basically started applying early in third year, and you've done a bit of research before that as well.
Yeah.
To look at what's out there, and I think that's a tip for young Muslims looking at watching or listening to this, that start thinking about this now, especially if you're in first or second year. The earlier you think about it and the earlier you make moves, the better prepared you're going to be. I guess it's going to be really useful now to actually know. So this is a 2-year program. You've done your first year. So what's it actually like, working in BT and the sort of corporate environment, and especially the graduate scheme? How does it work as well?
Yeah, definitely. So how it normally works, and obviously this varies sort of company to company, right? But normally within like a graduate scheme, it will be like a couple of years, maybe 2 to 3 sort of years, and depending on what sort of line of business you go on, right? Essentially what happens is you'll have like fellow grads with you as well to obviously learn from, etc. But you'll also have like development and the team in place to really help you, right? You have like grad people, grad buddies, or people like a year above you who've been on the program, will help guide you all along the way. So how it works for us is, which I know for most sort of other companies as well, is that normally you do some rotations, right? So you'll be in like this line of the business for this amount of time, and then you'll move on to the next one. So they'll give you like a big sort of flavor as to what actually happens within sort of BT. I mean, BT is a massive company, right? I didn't really know how big it really was till I got there, and I'm still learning about it as well. So, I think I'm into my second rotation now. So I do 3 8-month rotations. So my final one will start in January, and then I roll off next September. So that's the 2 years complete, and then it's me looking at sort of roles. So some companies will just automatically keep you on. Some will, advertise internal sort of vacancies, which you'll have to apply for. So graduate programs are really, it's like a development sort of period for you to learn as much as you can from the people around you. And it's kind of great as well, right? Because, when I was coming to BT at the start, the key theme that we were given from a lot of keynote speakers, seniors within the business, was networking. Networking is key, right? And if I'm being honest, I was never a fan of networking a couple of years ago. I always thought, why do I need to know this, right? Why do I need to ask people about this and that, right? But now I'm actually got into the workplace, I acknowledge how valuable networking is as a tool. It's so powerful, right? Because not only do you get to meet new people, learn from them, and have them as contacts. What's actually something that I stumbled upon, which was really important as well, was most of the jobs that you get advertised, after you get onto these sort of mainstream grad programs, like normal sort of roles, right? They're pretty much from word of mouth, right? They're not advertised, and someone will go to someone saying, "Listen, I've got this opening. Are you interested? Have you got someone?" Right? And if you're in that circle where people will refer to you, you start getting those opportunities, right? So networking is a very important sort of tool. It's quite nice for me because on the grad program, I can use like the grad card, right? I'm a graduate. I can be like to someone senior, I'm a graduate, I want to learn more about what you do, and start to make those initial connections, right, with the people. So graduate program really is all about development, learning. They don't expect you to know everything, right? The main thing is whether you just got the appetite and the desire to really work there. Because what's really important is the application process, right? It's always testing about, you look at the company values. So for BT, it's personal, simple, brilliant. It's really just testing whether you're a fit for those values, right? And then coming into the company, it's a case of whether matching those sort of values, but also then going above and beyond, what can you actually do for the company, showing value, right? I think where people go wrong is don't just say what you can do, actually show what sort of value you can add to a company. So that's sort of just a graduate program in a nutshell. And then coming back to sort of your latter point of the question, which was how do I find in a corporate world? You know what? I don't really know how to answer because it's something that I never got any guidance on. I never really expected anything, right? All I knew was corporate offices, typically Canary Wharf, white middle-aged men working there, the suits, ties, all that sort of stuff. I was like, that's pretty much as far as it went as regards to how my exposure to the corporate world. So once I got in, I mean, to be honest, I love wearing suits, so it wasn't probably for me to wear a suit or something, right? But what was really good was right when I was coming in, I think again networking really important. So what I did was, you got apps like LinkedIn, literally at the tip of your fingers, right? I just reached out to a few people already within this space. Just looked at people with sort of similar sort of job roles and which I felt were, share the same background as me, just asking them, what's been your experience? How have you found it here at BT? What do BT do to accommodate sort of faith facilities as well, right? Just give me a bit of understanding as to what do I do, and what to expect as well. So that was one thing I did to sort of help ease me in and just to give me a bit more expectation as what to do. But what was really good as well is that, during the grad program, we have like an induction period as well for a couple of weeks. So we spent like a couple of days up in Ipswich because that's where sort of their main research and development facilities. Then we went to BT Sport as well, which was really good. And then we actually went back to our, actual headquarters in St. Paul's, so in central London. And yeah, it was really good because we sort of just had like a tour around the building and stuff. So that initially gave me a bit more familiarity with the surroundings as to what to expect, where to work and that sort of thing. But the other thing which was really interesting was that it wasn't, BT is not really, I do work in the corporate area, but it's not as corporate as some other areas would be because BT is trying to get to a place where it's more sort of like a tech company, right? Where your Apples and Googles, obviously whether we get there is a different sort of question, but that's where they want to be and aspire to be. So there's like a mix between people just being like a smart casual, just wearing suits, right? Not a lot of people wear ties there, to be honest. I think they're starting to get outdated now, wearing ties. Not that I've got anything against it, I like it, but yeah, that was sort of my initial experience, and really it was just a case of first familiarizing yourself with the environment. Ask questions. I think it's really important to ask people questions.
Even simple ones.
Yeah, exactly. No question is ever stupid, right? Or silly. The one who's silly is the one who doesn't ask the question. So I didn't know there was a prayer facility, right? So I asked my grad manager, give me a tour. Where was a prayer facility? Where do I actually go to pray? And he went and showed me, right? And I know other people in the business that have been here longer than me that don't even know there's a prayer facility here, right? So you need to, so it's important to be asking people these questions and stuff, because if you want to be at a place which is faith inclusive, right? Obviously they could do a little bit better with sort of putting the word out there, but a lot of it's on your own accord. You need to take the initiative, right? So initially, there's a tick in the box. I know where the prayer facility is now. I know where to do my wuzu as well. So my advice would be really is familiarize yourself with the settings of where you're going to work. Network with people already in the same sort of position to gain their insights and how they've experienced it and what their advice would be. And then also just asking the questions, no matter how small or big or how silly it may sound, right? Like I said, there's no silly question. It's only for your own benefit. So yeah, that's sort of how I just navigate the corporate world. And from there on, it's just a case of really building upon what you've learned and just growing into it, right? Which comes with, experience and time.
Yeah. And I guess what was your sort of, your first rotation? Where were you actually working, and how was it transitioning from education to employment? I know you touched upon a lot of stuff you've done to help yourself with it, but it'd be good to know, how was the transition and what perhaps perceptions of kind of concerns that you had before you started that you may have changed when you actually did start?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's like anything within life, right? There's always going to be challenges and stuff, whether you expect it or not. Most of them will probably be unexpected. So, at least in this case, I knew once I graduated and I got the results, I knew now that I'm working at September, at BT in September. So I already had that already in the back of my mind. So now I had that couple of months to really do what I can, ask as many people as I can as to, what can I do in the meantime to actually make it easy for me. So, I think my most important sort of, advice or tip I give to people with anything in life, not just even with, transition from education to employment, is really, it's about your mindset, right? It's how do you actually look at yourself and what work are you doing to improve yourself? Because the thing is, right, and we're taught from, Islamic ideology and faith as well, is that with a hardship, right, hardship comes ease, but with the hardship is where we actually grow and where we we develop. It's those areas which really, it makes us, we have sort of a look within ourselves to see, listen, okay, this, God doesn't bear us with any more than what we can, take, right? What we can handle with. So it's really a case of looking at your shortfalls, because there'll be areas you'll be like, okay, this hardship has actually taught me this, right? So there's actually a blessing within that. So and there's like a saying which I really like, which is, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So, what that really means is start throwing yourself in situations where, normally you would say no, right? So I remember, and one example is I remember I was in university, I think it was second year or so, or maybe final year. It was, there was like a employability initiative that Queen Mary were doing, which was great. And I thought, I needed to bump up my CV and something to talk about. And initially I thought, you know what, oh, no, I can't be bothered, man. I can't bother. Let me just focus on my studies, right? I don't need this extra stress. But then I was like, you know what? Let's do it, right? Let's start to put this into practice. I can't just say something and not do it. So I did it, right? And, alhamdulillah, I never looked back since. I thought it was a fantastic experience for me. I met so many different people, so many different sort of skills, right? And then what's really brilliant about being comfortable and being uncomfortable, right, is that your brain starts to change now. And what I've really noticed since I've been doing that is that I now start to put myself forward for other sort of areas which I initially thought I would never go around. So I remember in like my first year, in the first couple of months of BT, I had an opportunity for some of the grads to present to like the top directors at BT, commercial directors. So literally the top team, right, about my current experience. And I immediately put myself forward. So that's sort of, how I navigate these sort of things, right? It's because when you put yourself within these situations, you start to develop the mentality now and the mindset where, no matter how difficult, difficult the situation may be, right? It doesn't really matter because I've been in this situation before now, it's another obstacle. So what? I've dealt with it before, by putting myself in these situations. And really what happens is these difficult situations, they become easier, right? The more you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations,
you level up and do more.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it's such an important phrase I really love and that I sort of live by and put into my work as well, because I think, anything that happens in life, it might be, the lowest of lows, the highest of highs, whatever it is, right? Mindset will get you through anything, right? It's just a case of really spending the time to develop it. Because obviously I'm no finished article by any means, right? But it's just a case of at least I'm starting to acknowledge and start to work on it. So, as I grow older and mature more, anything that phases me now, I've got like a really good sort of foundation to actually, bounce off upon and to help me in those situations. So yeah, it was a case of, networking, finding out more about people, but also doing pretty much just work on myself, really starting to really work on my mindset, because then, nothing really fazed me. And actually I was in a position where I was actually really excited to start joining. Obviously it's a bit daunting, don't get me wrong, big company, don't know what to expect, but at the same time I was really excited as well.
But one thing I really want to get into, which you've done, and something that really frustrates me that people don't do enough, is take the initiative.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I see it more with the brothers than the sister. I see the sister taking initiative and putting themselves out there, and they're doing really well. And I think that's probably why maybe in education they're going further. Yeah. But I think it applies to both anyway. But I think it really is taking that initiative. We're so scared to drop that message on someone to LinkedIn, dropping a message to somebody on LinkedIn. And we're always worried about if there's a program that I think it was the Q Consult one, wasn't it? The one you done.
That was one of them. I did another one which was Q Challenge. So there was two that they did. Yeah.
But I even I could probably say for myself a few years back, I probably would have been like, maybe I want to avoid that. And I imagine there's so many others that listen to that or that we know of that will be like that. And I think it really does jar. It feels jarring because it's like if you just literally take that step out to do it, then you're going to feel that level up and development on another level. Like once you just take that first step and you feel that development that you just got from being out of your comfort zone, you're going to want to do so much more.
100%.
But it's just like, if people just don't want to do it and there's no real good reason for it. Yeah. It's like, it really does bug me. And I'm like, really just take the initiative. Literally don't wait for someone to hand it to you on a plate. Go look for it. Go and do it. And you'll see the results for yourself.
I think it's
something that you've done, and I think people should learn from that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I think it's an important point as well, the fact that you mentioned, which is, a sort of spoon feeding, right? I think in the Asian culture, from my experience anyway, we're sort of, brought up in that area where we're spoon fed, we want things on a plate, right? But
Especially
really,
guys.
it's, yeah, exactly, so it's, I'm guilty of that as well, right? But, once you get out there, it's a completely different reality, man, compared to where we are in our own little homes and bubbles, right? It's nothing like that. It's completely different. And you need to, that's why I think mindset is important, right? Because if you're in the same mindset now where you're getting spoon fed and you expect everything to be like that, I can tell you now, mate, you're not going to go far, right?
Yeah.
There's the life is what you make of it at the end of the day, the opportunities that you seek out and who you reach out to. Because, yeah, you're right. A lot of people are scared to drop that initial message, right? And what really annoys me as well is that when someone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, right, just drop me a message to why you're connecting, because I want to help people, right? But I need to know what I can help you with at the same time. If you just give me a connect, right, and then I'm just like, okay, you've connected, but what's the connection for? Where can I'm here to add value to you guys and help you in whatever way I can, right? But I'm not going to know that if you don't tell me. So I always tell people, make sure you give me just a little note, even if you say, listen, I just want to connect to learn more. Absolutely fine, right? So yeah, it's important to make those initial steps. I think that's why it's important to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because I think once you make the initial step, you then start to doing it more and more regularly, and before you know, you've reached out to so many different people where before you were scared to even reach out to one, right?
Yeah. That's actually good advice there, especially on LinkedIn, that I didn't actually think of, where if you do connect with someone, if you literally drop them a little note, like make it a bit personalized and say, I'm interested to find out more about your area of work and, your journey, then I think when you do, maybe when you might have a question afterwards or might have a genuine curiosity about their career path or something about where they work, then when you do message them again, it's going to be a lot easier because you really dropped that initial message and they know why you've kind of connected with them. So that's actually a really good point for people to really do it on LinkedIn and get into that habit. I think that could, especially for a young person, that could really be a beneficial way to make meaningful connections. But let's go into your kind of typical day and week on a commercial kind of role and program. What does it actually look like? How would you describe it to someone that doesn't even have any idea what it would be?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm in one of those areas, right, where it's not as easy to explain.
It's always like that. It's always like that.
Yeah. So the struggle, right? But yeah, so essentially what it is, right, is I'm working in commercial and I've got more sort of focus on like contract management, right? So like BT, a multinational company, have contracts with different multinational companies across the world. So I work in the BT Global division, right? So obviously, as you can imagine, contracts across many different countries across the world, and essentially what it is, right, is and someone explained it to me in such a way which I thought is actually brilliant, right, is that with each contract that BT has, right, it's essentially like running a business. So with each imagine a business, right, what do you have in a business? A product that you sell, right? You're making sure that it's making good money, that you're having your margin, right, that you're giving the service that's required to the customer, as well as doing your other things such as looking at, make sure the customer relationship is on point, everything is happy, you're dealing with any sort of disputes. So yeah, that's sort of what I do, right? And that's what I really like visualizing my work. Each contract is like a mini business that I actually get to own, which I really like. So I think the difference between BT and other sort of companies is that BT's commercial is actually really commercial, right? You actually do the commercial work, like running the business, looking at the cost of like products, make sure they're accurate, make sure you're billing the right sort of stuff. Whereas I think other companies sort of like more law focused, right? More legal focused with the documents. So that's why I really like BT, because it was a really big commercial focus. So in sort of my first rotation, I was working on a government secure contract. It was a couple £1 million, right? So a big responsibility to be doing it. Obviously, I had, the support from my line managers as well to help me. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. So much responsibility, right? Because I was working on this contract where, it's like, firstly, it's for the government. So this is important, right? Exactly, as you may know. When I was doing it, I was in charge of so many different things, right? I was in charge of, essentially, people would report into me and then I'll report into like the business director, right? So I'm like the contract manager, then I go to business director, which would be one step higher. And then under me would have like the billing people, the project managers who do all the work and stuff. So they would all like report into me. So as you can imagine, coming to business, a lot of responsibility already, right? Managing these guys, making sure what they give me, I'm doing what's right. And then obviously liaising with the business director as well. So essentially it's so varied, right? I can't really do it justice as to what I do with regards to my role, because there's so many, I touch on so many different things. 1 week I do like forecasting, right? What you're going to be projecting for the next year, but then the other times you've got to be looking at your risk. You've got COVID now, so how is that going to impact your forecast or revenues going forward? You're going to take a hit, is it going to increase, right? So many different sort of things, but the best way to imagine it is like it's just really like a business that I'm running with so many different elements in place, right? And then how does a week actually look for me? Honestly, it depends, you know, it really
It sounds very
depends.
varied, which is quite a good thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I really like it as well, because it gives me so many different sort of skills, right? So much exposure commercially, which means that later on down the line, if I want to go into something commercial, which is more specialized, I can do it, right? Because I've got the foundation in place. So, you know, what my calendar and what it sort of looks like, it depends, right? Most of the time it's quite busy because a lot of things are going on. You have a few down days where it's a bit quiet, but I think probably the main staple is really you got to check your emails first thing in the morning, right? Because I need to know what's actually going on in the. Is there anything urgent that's come up that needs to be dealt with? But apart from that, really, it's just a case of making sure everything is operating as it should be and dealing with anything that comes in. So, you know, typically you'll have your team calls. I'll have team calls every week with the team to make sure everyone's okay, the project is going okay, any sort of issues that have come up that we need to deal with. And then you have to do sort of your internal BT stuff as well, like forecasting, which will happen like the first 2 weeks of every month, as well as looking at your risks and the opportunities. And also it's just looking at from a business side of view, really, it's just looking at, you know, what is it actually that the business is doing? You know, are there areas that you can grow it? And that sort of stuff, really. It's just like I'm trying to condense as much as I can, but
Yeah.
it's a bit difficult because it really is just varied, right? It just depends, and whatever comes up is what's really going to take priority.
Yeah. Before I go to the next question, your video carrying on as normal on your side? On my side, it's frozen a bit. Let me try to pick up my train of thought. So I think we've had a bit of a pause there. We had a bit of a tech issue,
Yeah.
but we're back. And I think the last thing we were mentioning about Dashboard Insight, and you mentioned a bit about your first placement, what it's like, and how it's very different and varied. I think one thing I wanted to ask was in terms of opportunities for learning. So, because I know there's for commercial, there's like the level 4 SIPs. I think it's Chartered Institute Procurement Services, and like that level 4. What is there a qualification you work towards for this?
Yeah, so within, like you said, you know, you got CPIM, and then you got like CMOF, like the finance, right? So in commercial, you've got so many different qualifications. Because I predominantly work within contracts, right? Our accreditation bodies, one called the IACCM, so it's the International Association for Commercial and Contract Managers. So recently what's happened is, you know, the seniors within BT, they've given us grads the opportunity to actually work towards this qualification. So like, you know, during this, we've got like a year or so to do it, right? So I have to go through like so many modules, so like back being at uni again, right? But yeah, we get to work towards that professional qualification. So it'll be like a practitioner course, and then from then on, right, you can then move on to like advanced or then world class, so you can, you know, go up as far as you want to go, really. So yeah, we get that professional qualification available to us to work towards.
Yeah, and in terms of like for next steps for this particular program, are they going to be planning to like look at what roles you can fit into going forward? Or are they going to sort of make you apply? How does it? Because it's a 2-year program, isn't it? And I'm used to sort of fast stream being like 3-4 years, but I know that the trend has been to go down to 2 years now. So it'd be kind of good to know what's their thinking like towards the end.
Yeah, so again, you know, sort of varies between companies, right? I think for us, it sort of depends, right? Because obviously if you're on like sort of your final rotation, you really enjoy it, there's like head count for you, and they'll just keep you on, right? So that's one avenue you can go down. The other avenue is simply if you want to stay within sort of this area, if it's for you, then you can apply internally within sort of roles that are being posted. Obviously, as internal employees will get sort of that first preference for that. The other bit would be, you know, sort of, and, you know, actually just, you know, going on the back of that, if you want to move to somewhere completely different within the business as well, you can also do that as well, you know. So again, that's internally applying. So that's the second sort of way you can go. And the third one is really just networking, again, you know, with other people, right? Because once, let's say you come towards the end of the program, you're coming towards the end and you're interested in like, you know, I want to work here, I want to know more about this, right? And you've already made those sort of connections, then they can start putting you in the right direction, start opening those doors, right? If you don't make those initial connections, make that first step, those opportunities are never going to be, you know, open to you, right? They're never going to present themselves to you. So you really got to take the initiative with these sort of things, because, you know, it's one thing BT or any company giving you the opportunity to be, you know, at a grad scheme working towards a company and excelling. but it's another thing for you to actually make the most out of it as well. So I'd say for me, really, all the opportunities, wherever I want to go, it's really what I make of it and what I do. You know, how do I utilize my time? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I networking with people? Am I learning as much as I can from them? So yeah, really, you know, it's that's sort of how BT do it. But I think, you know, that's just one element of it, isn't it? I think the other element, which is it's down to us as well.
Yeah. No, so it sounds like there's basically a lot of options, and it sounds like BT is quite invested in terms of if you're coming in, then they definitely want to keep you on, and if you're doing what you need to do, then there shouldn't be any concerns. And I know Umair, he went into very specifically about the salary, but I won't go into that very specifically. But I'm assuming, seeing it as a grad scheme and it's commercial, then there is good prospect to earn a good income, which I think
definitely
is important for people to consider. You know, no doubt. Even though it's not the most important thing, as I always say, but it's still a key element that, you know, you shouldn't forget about, because you do need to provide and earn a living, of course. One thing I'd be quite interested to know, because you mentioned there's been like a lot of variety, doing very different things across like different weeks. So like forecasting, like risk management. Like if you were to go back to before it started to where you are now a year later, what key skills do you think you have developed that has really kind of helped you in your work and even like day-to-day life?
Yeah, definitely. Really good question. I think, you know, for me personally, so if I take it all the way back now between September and to now, so essentially a year, right? I came to the business really, I'm knowing a bit about BT, didn't really know much about the role, right? Didn't know much about what to expect, what to do. So, you know, I had a really good manager, which really sort of eased me in, started getting me into you know, like a few sort of tasks as well, just to build up my knowledge, the foundation, get in place. I then start to accelerate and move me on to like the position of responsibility, which I had with the government contract, right? So the skills I've learned, firstly, I think it's sort of twofold. One is just within my day-to-day sort of role, right? So within commercial, I've learned so many different things, right? I'm never sort of a maths person, right? But I've learned so many things about, like, you know, P&L, so like profit and loss statements, interpreting, looking at stuff like revenue, margins, costs, all that sort of stuff, right? I've looked at, you know, risk management. How do you manage risk? You're looking at stakeholder management. How do you actually communicate with seniors within the business? Because there's times where you're going to actually present how the contract's performing to them, right? So I've got all those sort of commercial elements within my sort of skill set right now, which I think can be applied to like any sort of role. But I think what the other things that I've learned from like a day-to-day basis, which I can transfer, is firstly, just that point that I just mentioned, stakeholder management or customer relationship management, right? You know, how are you, you know, communicating, working with others, right? It's quite interesting because a lot of people work in a lot of different ways, right? You get quite some people where they're really nice, you know, a pleasure to work with, some not so. So you need to manage sort of your approach with them. How do you actually, you know, how are you tinkering your approach and tailoring it towards them to get the most out of the conversation, right? So, and really just getting the most out of BT and the company and just the whole contract as a whole. So I think definitely for me, I've learned quite a lot with regards to communication. You know, I think obviously it's a skill that most companies look for, right? Communication skill and team working skills as well. Not only am I working internally within BT, right, within my own team, within the contract, but I'm also working with, you know, external parties or, you know, third party suppliers, all these different stuff. So managing all of that stuff, you know, key skills which I think you can transfer towards anyone, because, you know, in life you're not just going to meet the same people like from the same background. There's going to be people from all walks of life. So that's something I've definitely learned, which has been great. And I think another one is really network, and I've really actually improved how to network with people, because I think people get quite nervous about the prospect and how do I actually network with someone? What do I actually say as the first sort of, you know, point of call, right? So I think that's something that I've really worked upon at this moment in time, and I continue to build upon it as well, you know, reaching out to as many people as I can, learning from them and starting to build that network, because I know there's a saying, right, that your network is your net worth, isn't it? So it's crucial. So yeah, I think, you know, I've learned so many sort of skills, right? But I think the main ones for me, which I think I could transfer into my work, I mean, into my life, right, day-to-day sort of life, is, you know, team working skills, communication skills, networking, but also I think mindset as well, you know, so keeping an open mind as well. When I've been working at BT, you know, I know I've been exposed to so many, you know, people from a different sort of background like this before, right? Typically, when I was at school, most of them were from the same background as me. When I was at university, most of them were from the same background as me. So this is like a bit of a change, right? Because now there's a lot more people who are, you know, who are white, who are from, you know, so many different backgrounds, whatever it may be. And I think it's great, right?
Because
you learn
it's a good thing, isn't it? It's not a bad thing.
And the thing is, right, you meet so many brilliant people as
Yeah.
well. I know a few white colleagues in the business. They're absolutely fantastic. They want to learn more about Islam. They're helping us with prayer facilities, all that sort of stuff, right? So it's absolutely fantastic. So, for me, when I'm coming into the business and I've got all these different people, it's important to keep an open mind because,
Yeah.
always, don't think just because they're not Muslim, there's nothing to gain from. There's so much you can learn from these people, whether they're Muslim or not, right? It doesn't matter. And these are the people that will help you excel. Like most of them are here to help you, right? Because when you go and ask them or network, and what you need to realize is that these people love talking about themselves, right? They're never not going to say no unless they're like really busy or something like that. They'll always make time to explain their journey because it sort of reminds them as well when they were in your shoes, whenever that was for them in the time before. They'll give you that advice and to help you along the way. So I think mindset has been something I've really started to develop more, being open-minded, starting to actually get into challenges and tasks which necessarily I wouldn't really have got into, right? And then now, coming into just day-to-day roles, I'd be like, you know what, something that wasn't for me before, now get actually stuck into it. So those are sort of the main sort of takeaways that I've got so far in my first year and that I'm continuing to build on as well going forwards.
Yeah. And I think because, as Muslims, we tend to live in communities that are full of people that are, Muslims, we tend to just kind of get into those areas and get you very used to being in some areas we're in. We get used to being surrounded by other Muslims and not other people. Whereas when you're in the workplace, it's almost the opposite. But I think sometimes we see that as a negative in the sense that, okay, there might just be white people here. I might not be able to, settle in, or I might not be able to fit in, blah, blah, blah. But then I think, as you just said, it's not a bad thing. I think it's good to meet people from different walks of life. And it's not a negative thing either because a lot of people, the vast majority, are friendly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then not everyone's out there to out there to get you as a Muslim. And I think sometimes we might fall into a trap that based on what we see in the media narrative and all of that, we might think, oh man, they can be thinking of this about me and all of that. But a lot of people are genuinely very friendly. And I think if we are confident, about our deen and, we're happy to go in and represent as we are and, just talk to people, just be like polite, be yourself, then I think in a sense that we represent it in a more important way. Because if you think about it this way, like if think about a minority ethnicity, a person that you've met from minority ethnic background that you've not met anyone else. Like, so say I've met one person that's let's say Japan, yeah. So naturally, when I kind of think about Japanese people, naturally I'm going to think about that person because that's the person I know. It just happens naturally. Yeah. So as Muslims, if we're going into these areas where we are the minority, then we've got to kind of think, what they see of us is likely or naturally what they can associate with, everyone else. So if they see something bad in the media, but then they know who you are as a proper, a firm Muslim he's got good principles, good manners, and, they know you're nothing like that. Then fundamentally, the way you represent is really important because that's how they can associate it. And that's how like an indirect, I think, dawah comes about. You also mentioned networking skills. Is there any, maybe you mentioned it already, but is there any little practices that's really helped you as you've been getting started with networking, especially as a Muslim?
Yeah, I mean, networking is something that I didn't really have any guidance on. I didn't really know how to approach it, that sort of thing, right? But then I think when I actually got into BT, that's when I actually started taking it really seriously, right? So I think one of the things I did at the start was, again, it was just asking other people, asking those questions. How do you do it? So I remember I had a grad buddy, right, which I'm still in contact with. And I just asked him, how did you network with people within the business when you were coming in, right? Such a massive company, so many seniors. What do I say to them, right? And he was giving me a bit of pointers in, what to do. Just say, hey, listen, I'm a grad here, just joined BT recently, want to learn more about you, about this, whatever it may be, right? So, and I think what you find is when you actually network with people, they're there to help you, right? Don't think that they're out to get you or anything like that. I mean, the worst case you're going to get, right, is a no or just no reply. If not, so be it. There's plenty of other people to go out and help, right? So I think for me, really, target, firstly, look at who do you want to network. Don't just network for the sake of it, right? Because I think another thing that's quite important is that, that when you go on like LinkedIn or something, right, people have got like 500 plus connections or whatever it is. But most of these people don't know any of these people, right? It's just for like clout or whatever to show them I've got 500, right? But yeah. But it's just add people that, because what I do, I just typically add people that I know where I can add value, right? And it's much more important to have a small network with much more value compared to a large network with, just people you don't know that won't add as much value as, as what you could get compared to a small sort of network. So firstly, identify those that you feel would definitely add value to you or learn from, right? That's probably the first point, is to target it down. Now start to, pinpoint it. The second bit is, if you're not afraid as to what to say, ask some people in sort of a similar situation. I'm pretty sure there's people within your sort of social circles, or even Google, you can ask, just type in how to network or what to say, and they'll give you like some openers and what to do. And then from there, the conversation just flows naturally, right? So for me, really, if it's for me that I want to learn more about like a certain role, I just reach out and say, hey, listen, this is my name. This is what I'm doing at the moment. Could we please schedule some time to, talk about this, etc. And so far, I haven't had anyone that said no to me, right? They've all been happy to talk to me and to learn more, because like I said, people love talking about each other, right? They're not going to say no. Maybe in a few instances they might, right? But most of the time they like talking about themselves. They won't turn on that opportunity. So my tips really for networking is, first identify those that you feel are going to add value. Don't just go ask anyone and everyone, right? Pinpoint it, and then just start to, if you're struggling with any sort of openers, literally you've got Google. Like, what, it's so important, right? Because we've got everything at the tip of our fingers, man. It's like you said, because we come from a place where we like to be spoon-fed, but start taking the initiative on these sort of things, because everything is here right in front of you. All the answers you're looking for, it's on Google, it's on LinkedIn, your networks, and start tapping into them and making use of it, really, is what I would say. And ask those questions, honestly, because I remember when I started at BT, not only was networking the key thing, but they always said ask questions. No matter how stupid or silly it may sound, right? Ask those questions, because that's how you're going to learn, man.
And I think there's something there that you're doing that you've not said it yet, but it's more or less, I think summarizes it, is be interested to be interesting. Because if someone's interested in your career and what you're doing and asking all these questions, then to them they're going to be quite interesting. Because somebody approached me and they're like really keen, finding about this and that, and saying they're starting up and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking this person's really interested in me. So naturally, because of that, I'm quite interested in giving them the advice and whatever they want to know about. So I think if you usually just you might not have, because you're a graduate or you're very new to the business, you might not necessarily have the skills or the value to give back. But the other way to that is, if you're genuinely interested in that person, then they're going to find you interesting, and they'll naturally just want to, give you that conversation and give you that time, because you're showing that interest and showing that initiative, which I think a lot of what you mentioned is taking that initiative, getting out of your comfort zone, asking the question. And it's like, what's the risk of it? What's the risk? Again, I mentioned of episodes, but the risk of inaction will be greater than the risk of action if you don't do it.
Exactly.
And like if you take the action and they can say no, big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
If they say yes, then that's potentially access to a whole new network as well, and a whole new mindset perspective, which is only going to be beneficial. I guess it'd be good to get an idea of the application stage. How was that in terms of the different stages?
So again, with the sort of graduate schemes, again, varies from company to company, but most of them, the main staples really is first you do like a online like application, just like filling out like a few details and stuff, standard stuff, and then maybe you have to put in a CV. And then what happens is that then you get like online tests. I absolutely hate the online tests. And then I'll go into each one into detail, but just the main sort of overview will be like online tests, and then it will go like a video sort of interview, and then an assessment center. Some other companies might put in like, a formal interview again afterwards, one-on-one. But in a nutshell, that's sort of what the application process is. So if you break it down, going into the specifics, so the online test, this is where a lot of people really fail, because, these companies, they've got limited spaces, so many applicants, right? This is their way of filtering out the sort of dead weight or dead. I'm not really a fan of these online applications, because I think there's more to someone than just these online tests, right? It's just, it's more about the personality and how they convey themselves. But that's how it is. So that's the game. So you've got sort of like 3 tests, right? One is like called a situational judgment test. So that I think that's probably the easiest one of the lot, because what it is, it just gives you like basic business scenarios, right? And it'll just be using your common sense, what would you do in this business setting? For example, a question could be, a team member is feeling left out in a group discussion. What do you do, right? And you just select the one which would seem most applicable, most appropriate. Then you've got sort of verbal reasoning, which is like they give you like a passage of text and you basically just extracting the information and asking, is this true or false? Was this piece of information in the extract? That sort of thing. And the one that people dread the most, I dread the most, was the numerical reasoning one, the maths one, right? It's I got a D in maths, but still, it's I just couldn't do them for the life of me, right? I just couldn't do them. People say, practice, 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 which I did, but it just wasn't sticking in my head. I couldn't do it. So it was, I'm glad I'm over that stage, because it was a tough time doing those. I dreaded every single one of those online tests. Well, the maths ones. I really enjoyed the other ones though. And then the last one is like a diagrammatical one. So it'll be like, they'll give you like some shapes, right? Some patterns. And then basically you've got to look at you've got to actually match the sequence. So it'll be like maybe 3 sort of patterns, and there'll be like a little clue in each one as to what the next pattern would be. And then you just got to select the one that matches it, so to complete the whole sequence. So that one's a bit tricky as well, right? So they're not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the online test. If you don't pass the online test, you get that dreaded email. You're rejected, your application is not going further anymore. Thank you for applying, all that sort of stuff, right? So that's that. And I had so many as well. I'll touch upon that later, but I had so many of those as well. And then we had then comes video interviews. So, video interviews, how we're doing sort of a podcast right now, right? You're just talking into a screen and they'll give you questions. So there's normally 2 that you get. One is like a case study scenario. So they'll give you like a pack of information, and then essentially it's just testing your ability to extract the information and answering the questions, really using that information available to you. And the second one, which is probably the most common, is like competency-based questions, right? So they'll ask you stuff like, why do you want to work here at BT? Or, name me a time where you've used like communication to help a team or drive a certain sort of narrative, right? So like it'll be like, this is a skill, use your previous experiences to highlight how you've used it. That's the video interview. And then it's just literally, or just questions just pop up on the screen, right? And then you have like 30 seconds to prepare for it. Then you've got like a 2-minute window to answer it, and then you move on to the next one. You've got to make sure you get within the window, because if not, they cut you off, and that's the last thing that you want. So that's the video interview. And then it's assessment center, right? Assessment center, when I did it at BT, typically, again, this depends. For us, we had like a one-on-one interview, 3 individual tasks and group exercises. The majority of assessment centers will have like a group exercise. That's just like a fact, right? That's a staple. Again, it's testing your communication skills, teamwork skills. And then you've got, some will do like presentations, some will do interviews, and up to the company, right? But those are the main ones that you can expect. So I was coming to the assessment center and I was like, this is my first ever one. I've never done one before, right? But I knew what to expect, because again, it comes to the point of taking the initiative. What I did is when I was looking at all the application processes, first, when I applied to the companies, before I applied, I familiarized myself with the application process. Okay, what do I expect? If I do the online test, what's next? After video interview, what's next? And then start looking at what is actually within each of these, So for example, if it's the assessment center, am I going to be doing a group task? Am I going to be doing a presentation? All of that sort of stuff, right? So familiarize yourself with all of the application processes. What does it actually entail? That way, at least you're off to a good start. You know what to expect, right? So nothing's going to throw you off. And then when it came to assessment centers, right, I knew what to expect a bit. Obviously, the company will give you more details when it approaches the event, the assessment center. But preparation is key, right? Preparation is key in this sort of aspect. So I just went into the assessment center, just being myself, tried to do the best that I could. Alhamdulillah, I got through. But I think what really helped me was the fact that I did my research here, looking at, what to expect. So if it was like a group exercise, I put on Google and asked a few people within my network, have you ever been in this sort of situation? What was your advice? I remember one of my mates actually recently did an assessment center. He got through and all that sort of stuff. Asking for his advice, and it really helped me. So again, tap into these networks, your social networks. Google's there to help you.
LinkedIn's a big one.
Exactly. That people got so much advice to give you, and that's what I did really. That's sort of the application process, and just sort of what I did to sort of familiarize myself and just make it a bit easier, because a lot of this stuff is uncertain, right? You don't know what to expect. But if you start to make those links and start to do your research and what to expect, you start to familiarize yourself. It starts to bring out that little bit of uncertainty out of the way. It starts to become a bit more certain.
Yeah, and I guess the more kind of familiarity and practice in a sense that you have, the more comfortable you feel on the day. I mentioned LinkedIn as a really good resource, and I think you're yourself, you're on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of other, I think, brothers and sisters that are on LinkedIn that work in BT and across different programs or different graduate schemes. And this goes back to taking the initiative. Literally, create a profile, find these people, ask them the questions, and
Exactly.
I'm pretty certain they'll be happy to support. Other areas I think that are quite useful that I've used before is, I think it was a Glassdoor, where it's more of insight into like some of the stuff, and even sometimes it can be hot or cold, but I used to use Student Room. Sometimes it's good advice, sometimes not so good advice. But there are insights you can get there that can help you. Another thing I would add, which I think not many people do, but I think it's a really bit of a game in the system kind of way, but a bit of a trick, is even like if you first have started university and you're in first year and you might not be eligible for the schemes, there isn't nothing stopping you from applying and trying the application stage. Like there's nothing stopping you from writing up application and just go through the process and see where it goes. Because I think the best thing sometimes is actually getting the real experience of it and applying all the advice you've been given in a practical context. And what better way is that than actually just, making applications to different schemes just for the sake of practice. But if it goes far, then who knows where it can lead to. But if not, you've got practice and that's under your belt. Experience is under your belt. Definitely. So when you go for the next ones or the main ones you want to go for, then, you've got some experience there and some more confidence, because it comes with competence and practice, and, the chances will increase. And I don't think many people do that. Maybe some people do that, but they don't mention it, but I don't see why nobody can, give that a try and see if that helps or not. So I would also, add that in there. Do you know when generally like vacancies open for this particular scheme?
Yeah, so it will typically be like we're in September now, pretty much this time, right? So normally they would open at August, September, some maybe October, right? And essentially what they do is just open on like a rolling sort of basis. So it'll be like if they fill up the places, they'll close it. So obviously it's better to get in early. That's why you got to do your research early, because the last thing you're going to do is when you're applying, a lot of these applications are going to take you a lot of time, especially these online tests that take like hours to do, right? So the last thing you want to do is doing that, then at the same time looking at other companies to apply for. Make sure you've got the list sorted, who you want to apply for, the application process inside out. And because when it gets to it, you're doing this and then you're balancing it along with your university studies as well, right? I remember when I was doing it in third year, final year, I was just starting out and I thought, let's do this quickly, because I'm going to have a lot of work to do as the year goes on. So if I do it quickly, I can manage it much more better, right? As opposed to being so overwhelmed with so much uni work and then doing this as well. So that's what I did. I just started early. I looked at application dates. When do they actually open? So I'm aware and I don't miss any dates. And you've got brilliant websites like that. For example, Bright Network is a really good one that you can use, and so many other ones. Literally just type into Google. Again, it's all there for you. Just got to take the initiative and start to do it.
That's a really good idea, starting early and planning it ahead. Because you're right, university, like you get the deadlines, the coursework, all that kind of stuff, which can get in the way and can impact how you perform or prepare for those particular applications, application vacancies, whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about now. But I think one thing about commercial that it would be good to get your perspective on, because a lot of it is management contracts, management of services, management procurement. What is that? I think the importance of diversity in terms of Muslims being in these sort of roles, and also not necessarily in a corporate environment, but even applying what you learn in these roles to organizations like mosques and the committees and trusts like that. Because I think there's a lot of stuff you're learning in terms of, you talk about managing businesses, managing contract, managing people. Like, what is the importance of Muslims learning that, and also kind of maybe applying that to the community, like on a mosque level? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question. I think it's very important for Muslims to be aware of such careers, right? Obviously we touched upon the fact that there's mainstream careers that Asians are already exposed to, right? And sort of, going down that route because mainly just to the exposure, they don't know anything else or any better, right? But yeah, I think it's really important to have Muslims in these sort of careers and areas, right? Because firstly, we're always talking about diversity and inclusion, right? But if we're not the ones to take the initiative and start to apply to these sort of roles, who's going to make the change at the end of the day, right? It's going to be, the onus is on us to, getting into these roles, start championing diversity, getting more Muslims into raising awareness about it, right? So I think for me, it's really important to have Muslims in sort of different careers, right? Because every career will teach you something different, and then you'll never know, right? When, for example, let's say someone in your mate wants to come into an area that you're working in, they'll know, for starters, that they can come to you for advice, right? Do you know anyone that you can put me in touch with, as opposed to, compare if you had a network with just people being in law, engineering, medicine, whatever. Fantastic areas, don't get me wrong, absolutely brilliant, right? But you need some variety, some breadth, some depth to
Diversify.
it as well, doesn't it? So if you've got someone, I don't know, commercial, then you've got someone in procurement, or let's say, someone was asking for a friend that, they're looking into this career. Do you know anyone that can help? Immediately within their contacts, they've got someone in this space that they can tap into, right? So again, your network, it starts to expand. It starts to help you in so many more ways than you can imagine. So I think being for Muslims is really important to be in such commercial careers, because firstly, there's a lack of awareness to it, and the onus is on us to actually raise the awareness of such careers and to actually, advocate the fact that it is a viable career for Muslims. You don't necessarily have to just be stuck with tech or medicine or all those sort of stuff. There's many more opportunities out there. It's just a case of getting the word out there. And I think, it'll be good as well to have more Muslims in these areas, because you start to build up the community as well.
Yeah.
You start to have more brothers and sisters within the company, and that's where you can actually make change, right? Change is going to start with us. If we're not there, right, these companies, they're never going to get to that, meet the diversity numbers or quotas or whatever it is you want to call it, because, it's up to us to make a change and to help the ummah as much as we can, right? So I think it's really important. And then, coming to your point on, doing a sort of a mosque level, school level, that sort of thing. Again, I think it's important, right? Because, so many different careers out there, but a lot of people don't even know half these careers exist. I was guilty of that. I didn't know it myself, right? I started to explore it slowly by doing my research. But a lot of people, if they're not told about it, they don't know about it. So I think there's an onus on us as a community as well as Muslims to actually put the word out there and to actually help people to, realize, listen, here's a Korean commercial. This is what it looks like. Does it sound good? Is it something that you're interested in? If so, good. Do some more research. Look into it a bit more. Start talking to people. If not, then look at something that you are interested in, right? I think for me, what's important is you don't need to know where you want to go into in life, as a job role. Don't worry about that. That will come in time. Just
100%.
at least start to think about it. At least start to have some ideas, start to shape what a future career might actually look like, right? And then from then on, as time comes on, it will become more clearer. If you have faith in God, at the end of the day, He will open doors for you that you can't ever imagine. So, and I think what's really important is always that, we talk about the application process, just be it in general, companies, graduate scheme. What's really important is values, right? So if you look at company values, what's most important to companies that have absolutely anything, right? It's their values, right? It's their values. So, and us as Muslims, again, we have so many values to live and abide by, and that we're proud that we live by day in, day out, strictly religiously, right? So imagine this, right? If you're stuck to your values, right? Why wouldn't someone or a company actually hire you as, because if you're aligned with your values, it gives them no reason to say that you wouldn't be aligned with their values, right? So let's take an example where you're at an assessment center, and let's say you're a male, a female comes, and white female, she comes, she shakes your hand, but obviously you can't shake your hand due to Islam not allowing it, really. So what do? Obviously it's a bit awkward, so you just have to mention that, listen, I can't due to faith reasons, right? So you might think it's a bit awkward, right? But look, here's a difference now, right? And this is how you start to differentiate yourself from other people, which is let's say you're going into an interview now, right? You're doing an interview with her. Let's say there's a question where it says, why do you want to work here at BT, for example? Immediately, a lot of people would say things like, oh yeah, BT, massive company, huge company, global footprint, working with so many different companies. I want to be in this space because it's big, all that sort of generic stuff, right? But what are you actually doing to differentiate yourself from other people, right? And what I would do is I would always bring the point about the values. The values is so important. So let's take that example where the handshake, you couldn't shake the hand. What I'd do, right, is I'd put a spin on it, and I'd actually start to differentiate and give them an answer that, is memorable, something that sticks in their mind. So when they think, oh yeah, Zeeshan, oh yeah, he said that, the name's already within her mind, right? So what I'd say is that, listen, the reason I want to work at BT is because, listen, I look at the values, personal, simple, brilliant, and I think I abide by them clearly. And the example is one that I just showed you, right? Within the Islamic sort of faith, I couldn't shake your hand due to the fact that we can't, right? So what you're immediately sharing right there is that, listen, you have your own set of values and you're not compromising it on anything. You can then make a link between your own values and the company's own values and start putting them together. And now look what you're doing, right? You're giving an answer that hardly anyone would have said within the application process. First differential right there. Fantastic, tick in the box. Second bit is you start to get them to think about, that's a memorable answer, something that will stick within their mind, because that's what you want to do, right? You want to leave like a long lasting impression. So don't think that, Islam, the faith, it can't help in these situations. It actually can, right? It's just a case of how you use it, how you tailor it to each sort of situation. So yeah, I think the values bit is just really important for any companies, because If you're true to your own Islamic values and faith, everything else will become open and apparent for you, and it'll be much easier for you to be aligned with other company values. Because, like I said, the application process is testing you whether you're fit for their values. If you can't, match or follow your own values, what makes you think that they're going to hire you thinking that you're going to follow their values, right? So it all starts within house and then going forwards.
Yeah, being principled and standing for your values, that does show something that we don't get. Actually, it's quite interesting anecdote insight there that you can really reflect on and think about. Let's come up to the last sort of few points. So in a sort of commercial career, or if it's a BT grad scheme, or generally in a commercial career, what advice would you give to young Muslims in terms of that are looking to build some of these skills in this field? Like, 'cause I realize it's quite broad. So is there anything in particular that they should be doing to build skills and experience in this field, other than what you've mentioned in terms of reaching out to the people, finding out what it's like, asking the questions? Because again, with this one in particular, and like for example, with things like let's say tech and developing, like developers, you can look at building certain languages or certain kind of team working skills, blah blah, because it's very specific to the role. But in commercial, is there anything specific, or is it more or less just generally looking to build on the things that you mentioned, such as like team working, such as like networking, such as like kind of stakeholder management? Are those the things that would you say should be the main focus? And if so, how can potentially one go about building those from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think the first and most important thing is that regardless of what area you're going into, whatever role, job it is, or company, right, all of them look for main staple, skills, which is what you just mentioned: communication, teamwork skill, leadership skills, all that sort of stuff, right? Those are skills that will apply to any role at any company. So that is one thing that you need to work upon. And it's transferable skills as well, right? I worked at Tesco before as part-time during my uni, and I picked up quite a lot of valuable communication and teamwork and skills there. So don't think that just because you worked at a different area, which is not like some big massive company, that you can't use it, because you can, right? It's just a case of you tailoring it. What examples do you have from that experience that can help you now? So what I'd say is those are the core tenant skills that any company look for, that you need to work on and demonstrate, whether it's a CV, cover letter, application process, whatever it is. That is something that you need to work on 100%. And then I suppose the other thing is, with regards to commercial, more specific, I don't think, if you're going in like a training program, graduate sort of program, again, I don't think it really matters, because they don't expect you to know it, right? Because that's what the graduate program is all about. It's about learning on the job, learning what the role is. Obviously, it's great to have a bit of background in it, but it doesn't mean that you need to know it, because like I said, most of them are open to any discipline, degree wise. So it doesn't matter in regards to that. I think, what's important is that if you start looking at the career itself, to start to get a feel as to what it is. So I remember when I was, when I had like a brief sort of induction before I started a couple of months ago, I was like to one of the managers, is there something that I can do beforehand to actually learn more about this career? Because I didn't know a lot about it. And he recommended me a book to read. So I read the book, and it was great. It gave me more understanding about what the area is. So that's one area, right? I suppose.
Do you remember what the book was called?
Yeah, it was actually great right here as well. It's the fundamentals of contract and commercial management. So literally, it was just giving me the basics of what contract management is and what to expect, right? So I was just reading that over the summer to pass some time as well. So I thought, at least I had a little bit of exposure as to what to expect. But then again, it was a completely different ballgame actually doing it and reading it.
Yeah.
It was better than not doing anything at the same time. So I wouldn't stress about it really. I think focus on the main skills, because on a day-to-day basis, that's what you're going to be using day in, day out, regardless. And then if it's like a commercial, things that I would say is, it sort of depends what line you're going in. If it's more sort of commercial focus, you'll have quite a bit of stuff to do with like finance. So like, looking at profit and loss statements, looking at stuff like your basic business stuff, like what's revenue, what's your cost, what's your margin, and all that sort of stuff. Just familiarize yourself with terms like that. But for me, I think focus on the main skills, and then tap into networks, see who are actually in this area, and ask them for their own advice as well. They may give you advice that I may not necessarily give, to give you a different sort of dimension, and just take it from there and build upon it. Really, just get a bit of flavor as to what it is. And then I think the main thing is, as long as you have the aptitude and the attitude really to do well, you're going to be fine. Because like I said, you're here to learn. You're here, BTCU as a fit for their values. So that's what you've got to do at the end of the day, and all you've got to do is just execute it, build upon what you've done, and just keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, and there's a lot there. And, if people want to hear even more, then kind of each episode, I do talk to different people and try to get their perspectives on what skills they think should be built across their profession. So there's a lot there that kind of crossover as well. So, if this sounds something like quite interesting and you want to know more, check out the other episodes as well, because it goes into even more tips. And I think there's so much there. It's not just one thing fits all. It's a variety, and the career pathway, like probably most people mention, like it was never what they perceived it to be from the start. I think the only one where there might be some certainty is if you're doing medicine, because you know what you're going to get into. Even that would be very different because you don't know what area of medicine you'll get into. But that's like seems to be the most kind of pinpointing one, whereas everything else is very you kind of figure it out as you go along, which is fine, which is perfectly fine, and that's how it works with the world of work and a lot of stuff in life, and that's why it really does teach you that those real world experiences that education doesn't give you at university or college or stuff like that. So it is really valuable. I was going on to that the final part or the final bit. So I guess what would be your kind of key lessons and reflections and the kind of final words of advice that you would share with young Muslims, maybe thinking about either this sort of career path or just generally from what you've, because you're still relatively new into your career, but what would you share at this stage?
I think most important thing is to make sure that your own values, you're aligned with the Islamic faith, the values and what we're taught, right? If you're not aligned with God, then you know nothing's going to happen for you at the end of the day. Everything comes from God at the end of the day, right? The Almighty. So for me personally, first thing first, make sure you're in check, you're in line with your faith. Obviously, no one's perfect. Don't get me wrong. We all have our own learnings to do. But first things first is if you've got that sword and you're actively working towards to get into a better place, rest assured, God will take care. Will take care for the rest of things for you. So that's probably the main thing is what to do. Is my advice, right? Is make sure that you're aligned with your faith, because without God, nothing's going to happen, right? No matter what you do, if God's not on your side, nothing's going to happen, right? So it'll probably go the opposite way that you want it to go to. So that's number one, right? But then again, it's not the only element as well, right? Because a lot of it, it does come from God, but the second bit is down to ourselves as well. You can't, for example, you can't just be like to God that, let's say you're unemployed, you're sitting on the couch, right? And you're like, oh God, I need a job, You can't just expect you to be sitting on your couch doing nothing and then God just magically gives you a job opportunity right there and then, right? You need to actively go out and do something, you can't just rely on your laurels in that respect. So, my advice is first, with God, be aligned with Him, making sure that you're being the best Muslim that you can, because He ultimately will open the opportunities and doors for you. The second bit is on yourself. So what are you personally doing yourself? So, I think mindset is probably the most important thing when it comes to this sort of thing. And obviously being the things that we touched upon, which is being proactive, taking the initiative. So for me, right, I think what's really important is that we as Muslims, when you're going to any sort of role or something, we need to differentiate ourselves more compared to anyone else, because we're up against it at the end of the day, right? We're up against it. So we need to actually put in that bit more and actually to differentiate ourselves and actually show the company, why should you hire me compared to, someone else? So one way that I really like to do it is, it's the word extraordinary, right? I really love this word because if you break it down, I think it can help you towards anything as well. So if you break it down, extra and ordinary. So ordinary, right? What is ordinary? It's your typical average Joe on the street, just trotting along in life, going with the status quo. Basically your average person, right? Not doing anything to further himself, but just content with life, right? What's extra, right? Extra is the one that takes ordinary but puts a little bit more in. So what actually does the extras mean? The extras is like, doing that extra rep at the gym, maybe saying like another 5 minutes, doing another call late at night, or working like 10, 20 minutes more, coming in early, those sort of things, right? It could be something so small, but what you do is when you keep going on those little extras and you keep adding it, it then makes the word extraordinary. Now look how you're differentiating yourself compared to the ordinary person, right? You're doing the small little things and you know what, don't underestimate, because they'll keep adding and they'll keep building up to a point where you'll have a massive differential between yourself and the other person. So that's one important thing, because the thing is, right, what do you do when 1,000 other people are applying for the same role at the same company that want the same job title or have the same goals as you? What do? You outwork them, right? That's how you're going to differentiate yourself at the end of the day. So that's one bit that I'd say is important. Look at the word extraordinary. I think will keep you in good stead in anything that you do. Just that little bit extra, it will go so far. Just keep consistent with it. The second bit I'd say is to do with mentality, right? So I think this is really important because for me, right, when I was applying for roles and graduate programs, whatever it may be, I had so many rejections. It was absolutely ridiculous, right? I had so many. It was, I could probably over 20, right? I applied to so many different places. I had so many rejections.
How'd you
It's
handle that?
part of the parcel, right? It's, you know, this is the point I'm coming on to. That's how I handle it, is mentality, right? Mindset. So a lot of people, when they, look at rejection, they think, oh, I'm going to throw in the towel, man. This ain't for me. This is too much stress and stuff. But what I did is the way I looked at it is that, listen, rejection is not rejection. It's redirection. A setback is not a setback. It's a setup, right? The more no's that you get, the closer you are to the yes. So you need to look at it in a positive frame of mind, because I could easily say that, listen, I went to work at this company and I got upset I didn't get in it. But now look at me at BT, where I'm working here at BT with the BT Muslim Network, doing so many different things. I may not have got that opportunity to do that compared to other companies, right? So everything happens for a reason, right? And I think rejection is a really good thing, because like I said, it's redirection. It's pointing you into the way that you need to go. God knows better than us at the end of the day where we need to be and what's good for us and what's bad for us. So that's one thing, right? Is your mindset. How do you actually perceive things? The other thing I'd say is mentality as well. So I like doing my little analogies and stuff, right? But this is one that I came across that I really liked, which was if you take the animal kingdom, for example, so the lion is a king of the jungle, right? But if you look at it, more closely, the lion isn't the biggest because you've got the elephant there. It's not the fastest because you've got the cheetah there, and it's not the smartest either because you've got plenty of other, hosts of other animals in the kingdom that are much better than or much smarter than that can outwit a lion. So why is it king of the jungle, right? It's because of their mentality. It's because when a lion looks at an elephant, it thinks lunch, is hungry, wants to eat it. Whereas if you look at the elephant compared to a lion, the elephant thinks run, right? So how do you apply to sort of your day-to-day role, or like in life, or just rejection or anything that happens? Like, is look at what happens there in that instance, right? Something that a lion compared to an elephant, they're completely mismatched for size, but the lion goes after it. Why? Because it's hungry. It wants to get what it wants, right? It needs to eat. So when you're looking at your own personal goals, for example, let's say you want to get on a grad scheme, you keep getting rejections. Are you going to be the lion, or are you going to be the elephant? You're going to keep going after what you want. Because I think the problem is that a lot of people want success, right? They want to be successful. But when they actually look at what it takes to be successful, then they start to throw in the towel, right? They're like, oh, this isn't for me. Because I remember, I don't advocate, but when I was at university, I had to get the grades. I had to get this 2-1 for BT, right? Because I'm not getting into the role. So I was like, listen, I've got to give this absolutely everything that I've got. So literally, right, when it came to January onwards, because all of mine were in the summer, I had like 8 exams to do. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this absolutely everything, right? So and I did this for the last 2 years, but the third year I upped it a bit more. So I was like, literally every day or most days, I was in my room. Literally, my parents would literally just see me just to come down to eat, and then I'll go back up, and I'll literally be revising 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Literally putting in. People say it's crazy, right? But I'm thinking, listen, if you want success as much as you want to breathe, you're going to get there in the end. It just depends how much do you actually want it, right? So for me, it wasn't a problem because, listen, I really wanted this. So whatever it took, I'll do it, right? I'll put in what needs to be done. Oh, is that video gone again?
Yeah, don't worry. We'll finish. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, literally, that's what I did. I just put in as much as I could in to my work to get to where I want to be, because I think what's important is that, listen, there's a goal in mind, but now look at what do you actually need to put into that work. What do you need to do? And that was a plan. 2-1. What did I have to do? I had to work hard. I had to work harder than anyone else in the room to get the grades I did. And alhamdulillah, I did really well. My finally, I got a first in my dissertation. But again, this is what it comes down to. Mentality, mindset. How are you looking at, certain situations in life? Are you looking at a negative point of view? Are you looking at it from a positive point of view? And what are you actually doing about it? Don't get defeated when it comes to rejection, that sort of stuff. It's a good thing. It's helping you grow and develop. The problem where people go wrong is that they look at rejection and then they throw in the towel. It's like, oh, listen, man, I've got rejected. This is it now. That's it. It's not for me. When in fact, it's a wrong attitude to have, So that's what I'd say for people, is work ethic, be the hardest worker in the room, have that mindset where every setback is a setup, the more no's you get, the closer you are to a yes.
Keep going.
And exactly. Keep going.
Keep going, 100%. And that, yeah, that's some sort of advice. And I think people need, that's one thing we need to internalize as well. That persistence, patience, and perseverance, like those 3 P's, it will lead you to it. But again, it's having that patience. It's not going to happen straight, but it's also learning and using each setback as a learning curve as well. Because if we got, say for example, your first job you applied for, you got it straight away, then you wouldn't really value it as much. So I think we also need to see from that perspective that, you know, rejections and the no's really does help us to value it and anchor what we're about as well. So it helps us to, you know, figure out what our values are, and really the emotion of, you know, the rejection kind of enhances it and gives us the drive that we need. Because if you hear every like inspirational story, there's always some sort of setback or some sort of, you know, pushback. Every superhero movie you see, something bad happens, and the superhero, what does he do? He reacts to that. The emotion drives them, gives them the values, and helps them to really pin that down, and then they go on to achieve what it is they need to achieve. So there's a lot there we should really internalize. And I'll end it here, but I also want to mention that if I'm correct, are you the chair of the PT Muslim Network?
Yeah, so I wish I was a chair, but no, I'm not. I'm not the chair. So we have they're more sort of senior within the business, the chairs and coaches. But I've sort of just come in. I just got in touch with them saying, listen, you know, as part of the BT Muslim Network, let's start to do something within this sort of space that you're doing. You know, that's why we've been in contact, which is really to play our part in the social mobility space for young Muslims. I think it's much needed. We have the platform to, you know, God has blessed us with this platform where we are now. So let's do something about it. So yeah, I play like a leading role within the network. You know, leading the sort of mentorship and talent sort of events for grads, apprentices, etc. So yeah, I come under sort of the leadership team. Obviously we relay our feedback and plans into them, so they see it from like a top level point of view, but really the nitty gritty and nuts and bolts of what we need to do is really down to me with regards to this function.
And I would definitely suggest people that are, you know, considering a career here or that want to get in touch with Zeeshan. He is on LinkedIn, and you can also find out more about the BT Muslim Network there, and how you can find out how to, you know, get in touch. And if you have any kind of questions, queries, or just general curiosity about career, or you want some advice or insight about career in BT in different areas, then you can definitely reach out. And I would 100% encourage, if you're going to create a LinkedIn account, if you're on LinkedIn, definitely add Zeeshan. And, you know, if there are things you want to find out about it, or just, you know, want to follow his career, then by all means do connect. Because I think the more people you connect with, and the more insight we get, and the more networks you can connect with, especially like the BT Muslim Network, there's a lot more like that.
Yeah.
And the more that we reach out to, and the more you expand your network, then there's only going to really benefit and help you. And it's down to you at the end of the day, the listener, the one that's watching this, that, you know, if you want to, you know, build those connections, then take the action. And it's like you've mentioned many times, the platforms are there at the tip of our fingers. LinkedIn is there. Download the app, create a profile, get started, and connect to different people, and, you know, find out what it is that you need to find out to, you know, figure out what you want to do. It's all there, man. It's all there. But, you know, with that, I'll end here. Jazakallah khair for joining. I know we've had a bit of some technical glitches with the video, but we made it to the end, and I think, you know, I hope people will really benefit from this insight and advice as well, because it's also always good to get different perspectives from people in different parts of their career. And the fact that you're at the start of your grad scheme, done your first year, it's good to get, you know, the idea of how you've managed that and how you've kind of made the most of it so far. And, you know, inshallah, like with the mindset that you have, it will only continue to grow and develop and be successful. And we'll hopefully follow that on LinkedIn and see how that goes. But I just want to say jazakallah khair for that. And, you know, that, yeah.
No, the pleasure's all mine, brother. You know, jazakallah khair for having me on the podcast. You know, I'm obviously happy to help anyone on the LinkedIn front. You know, just connect. Happy to help in any way that I can. But yeah, no, like I said before the start, fantastic initiative that you're doing. You know, much needed for the ummah. Even if one person benefits from it, then, you know, it's a result at the end of the day, right? So honestly, the pleasure's all mine to be able to, you know, feature on the podcast. And, you know, thank you for bearing patience with me with regards to, you know, the matters. I never have no technical issues, but, you know, that's just tech for you, isn't it? You know, but, you know, alhamdulillah, we got there in the end. Hopefully there's enough sort of insight that I can, you know, a lot of people can take away and start to practice. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. So jazakallah khair.
Barakallah feek. And, you know, with that, we'll end. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.